They say the mind replays your entire life before you die. But what if you've already spent 24 years watching it on repeat, waiting for the state to press play one last time? Tonight, in a quiet Indiana prison under flickering fluorescent lights, a man named Roy Lee Ward takes his final walk. He's 53. He's lived half his life inside these concrete walls. And in just a few minutes, he'll die inside them too. Outside, the world hardly notices. A football game, a dinner rush, a scrolling feed. But behind these walls, the air hums with history and the final act of a story that began with a single, unforgivable choice. He doesn't look like the monster the headlines promised. He's quiet, calm. A guard says he looks lighter today, but that's what happens when you know the clock is no longer chasing you, it's catching you. Roy Lee Ward was convicted in 2001 for the rape and murder of 15-year-old Stacy Payne, a small-town Indiana teenager who never made it to her next day of school. The crime was brutal, the kind that cracks a community's bones and leaves it limping for decades. When the police caught him, he confessed. Then he took it back. Then he confessed again. The courtroom was a furnace of rage. Parents, teachers, neighbors, they wanted blood. And the jury gave it to them. Death by lethal injection. But trials end faster than trauma. And for the next 24 years, the case refused to die. In 2004, the Indiana Supreme Court overturned his conviction. They said the trial was poisoned by emotion, that the jury's hate might have blurred the line between justice and vengeance. But 2 years later, after a retrial, the sentence came back the same. Death again. Because some stories refuse to change their ending, no matter how many times you rewrite them. Ward's lawyers filed appeal after appeal. They argued he was mentally ill, remorseful, shaped by abuse and addiction. The state argued he was manipulative, rehearsed, and unrepentant, and so the paperwork built towers higher than the man himself. But paper doesn't forgive, it just delays. By 2025, Ward had outlived most of his fellow inmates. He spent more time in solitary than in sunlight. The guards rotated every few years, but his cell never changed. A metal cot, a Bible, a photo of his mother from the early 90s, and a window too small to see the sky. On October 8, 2025, the Indiana Department of Corrections confirmed what everyone already knew. The last appeal was denied. The governor refused clemency. The death warrant was signed. 7 p.m., the hour marked in ink. At 6 o'clock, a chaplain entered the cell. Ward nodded, expressionless. They prayed for 30 seconds. Then silence. At 6:15, his final meal arrived. A cheeseburger, fries, and a can of soda. He didn't touch the fries. He only drank half the soda. When asked if he had any final words, he said, "Nothing to say, nothing left, no tears, no apology, no last sermon, just a man staring through glass as if the world was already gone." At 6:55, the execution team entered. They guided him down the corridor known as the last mile. His wrists were steady, his steps slow. A few guards who'd known him for years avoided eye contact. Inside the chamber, light bounced off sterile metal. A gurney waited, straps open like arms. He lay down without resistance. One last exhale. The fourth line slid in. Clear fluid, cold. 3 drugs, 3 stages. Sleep, paralysis, silence. At 7:23 p.m., the physician leaned forward, touched his wrist, and whispered 2 words the state had waited decades to hear. He's gone. The curtains closed, the witnesses filed out, and Roy Lee Ward became another headline, executed after 2 decades on death row. But stories like this are never about one man. They're about what we see in him. To some, he was a monster who deserved the end he got. To others, He was a product of a system that punishes the poor, the broken, the unhealed. Between those two truths, the moral and the mechanical, lies the part of America we never talk about. The part that believes death can fix pain. For Stacy Payne's family, the execution wasn't celebration, it was survival. They had waited half their lives to hear those two words. He's gone. And yet, when the news reached them, there was no joy, only emptiness, because death never brings back what it took. Her mother once said, "I thought I'd feel peace when it happened, but it just felt like losing her all over again." Outside the prison gates, protesters held signs. Justice for Stacy, end the death penalty, two crowds, two kinds of grief, one demanding retribution, the other redemption. As the news broke, reporters debated whether executions still mattered. Did it stop future crimes? Did it heal broken families? Or did it simply feed an old hunger we no longer question? In the 21st century, America is split. Half believe capital punishment is justice. Half believe it's revenge wearing a badge. And nights like this, when the lights dim and the chemicals flow, reignite that argument all over again. Ward's story didn't end at 7:23. It began again in the silence that followed. A silence filled with everything we fear to ask. What if redemption exists, but we never let it live long enough to see it? What if the state kills not just the guilty, but its own chance to evolve? His death became a mirror, one that showed us what we still are. A nation that builds gallows for ghosts, that speaks of justice but tastes blood, that tells itself it's protecting the innocent while destroying the possibility of grace. There's a strange poetry to an execution. It begins with paperwork and ends with paperwork. A heartbeat becomes a signature, a life becomes a number, and when the doctor walks out, the only sound left is the buzz of a fluorescent bulb. The world moves on in minutes, but the system remembers for years. Tonight, Roy Lee Ward is gone, but his shadow remains. In every debate, in every courtroom, in every parent who wonders what justice truly means. Maybe this story isn't about crime. Maybe it's about consequence. Because every time we decide who deserves to live or die, we write another line in the book of who we are. And if that book ends with silence, then maybe we're not reading it right. Justice is not a finish line. It's a mirror we hold up. And sometimes it shows us things we don't want to see. Roy Lee Ward was executed by lethal injection on October 8th, 2025. He was 53 years old. His victim, Stacy Payne, was 15. Both lives ended too soon, one by violence, the other by consequence. And somewhere in between, the truth waits, still unsentenced.